Are you looking for a space where you will learn to improve your mental strength, emotional health, and heal your insecurities from the inside out? Take the first step to living a more meaningful life with the Better Me with Body by Bree podcast. I'm your host, Bree. I'm a certified personal trainer, entrepreneur, and mother of 3. I've helped empower thousands of women to take action through fitness, nutrition, meditation, personal development, and aligning thoughts with action. This podcast is for those who are ready to feel inspired and motivated to live a more purposeful life. Let's grow together. What is your family brand? Have you ever stopped to think about what your family brand stands for? Have you ever talked with your kids about what you all value and how you can work together to support one another to achieve your goals? In this podcast with the family brand, we talk about how creating a family brand helps to support your family to create deeper connection, understand your children better, and be the best version of yourselves possible. I'm so excited for you to listen and get to know this amazing couple. Let's get started. Hi, Melissa and Chris. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Awesome. We're so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I was shocked that you were able to do this having 5 children. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get both of them on, but I'm going to try. I'm so grateful. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we love doing the podcast together, our podcast, and we love anytime we can be a guest together. It's really fun. It doesn't always happen, but today we're excited.
Yes, you guys are pretty busy. You have an online course for families. You have your own podcast. What is your podcast called?
It's called Family Brand Podcast.
I love that. So I love how your platform is all about connecting with our children and our family and why that's so important. So can you explain to us what got you started on the journey of helping families build stronger relationships?
Yeah, we always really kind of say it was 3 things. Just so quickly, one of those things was that Melissa and I 13 years ago were separated and had 2 beautiful little boys at the time. One was 18 months old, one was a newborn, and we were separated, going to get divorced. And just through, I say, Melissa's leadership and her taking a stand for our marriage and fighting for our family, and an amazing marriage counselor, we decided to fight for our marriage and fight for our family. And so we know what it's like to really struggle. We also know what could be possible. So we feel really called to share our story and hope it strengthens other families. I would say second is there's been a lot of struggles with addiction in my family. I've lost both of my brothers and a nephew. And I just really wanted to do something that would recreate the family narrative of what it means to be a Smith in our family. And then I would say Melissa had a really cool experience.
Yeah, so I'll share my experience really quick that led to Family Brand being what it is today. Is I used to work as a nurse, and then I kind of stepped back, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a really, really long time. Our oldest is he'll be 15 here in a couple months, and our youngest is 5 right now. And so a couple years ago, I knew she was our last, and so she was probably around 3, and I started thinking, am I going to go back to working as a nurse pretty soon? You know, when she gets older, I kind of thought I always would, but I listened to this podcast around that same time, and it talked about praying, like when you're looking for like direction in your life, instead of saying, okay, look at God, like what's my next thing? Asking like, how can I build your kingdom, God? Like, how can you use me? Like, where am I meant to serve? So I started kind of asking that question and just thinking about it a lot. And one day I just felt so clearly that how I can build the kingdom is by building families. And so ever since then, at the time we were like, okay, I don't know exactly what that will look like, but Chris loves talking about families, like he said, and I like felt this calling, like, yep, that's what I'm supposed to do right now too. So we just love sharing, you know, on any platform that we can, all about ways that we found to strengthen our family and share that with other families too.
I love that. And some people might not know what our family brand is. So how do you help people create their family brand, and what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is something Bree, that I've done with companies for years now. So I have a company where we go and work with organizations and entrepreneurs to help them really uncover their identity and unlock their message and share their story and their brand out there with the world. And so I had been doing that for entrepreneurs and organizations for years and gotten to work with some of the coolest organizations, around, and like was so impacted by them, and they were impacted by the work I was doing for them. And then I had this thought one day driving home from my office that was like, why don't we do this for families? Like, why do we put so much time and attention and energy into building a brand as an entrepreneur and our culture and our companies, but we don't build our most important brand, which is our family's brand? And your family has a brand, like whether it's by design or by default. Your family, your home has a culture. You have values, whether they've been intentionally designed or just kind of unspoken. And it was just this idea, this thought that I shared with Melissa. We should take our family through the process I take companies through. We did it, and it was really transformative. Like, it really made a difference, and our marriage became stronger than it ever had been. We became more connected to our children. We saw them become more confident than they'd ever been, just because of this brand that we had created. And it's a combination of your family's values. So we help you create 7 core values in these 7 really intentional categories, help families create a family vision statement, and then really a culture of belonging where everyone in the home feels loved and seen and accepted for who they are. And then we give them a blueprint to how to live it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually, like no differently than you would a really successful company. And I think we just want to see families win. Like, I think so many times families don't feel like they're winning. They're kind of either just struggling or existing or striving. And we just want to see families. We want them to feel like they're winning, that every individual in the family is winning. So yeah, it's really thinking about like a brand for a company, but thinking about it for your family.
Well, that's genius, because I feel like right now it's not even that people are intentionally not, giving their family the time that they need to create a brand or to be intentional with what they need. But I feel like it's distraction. Like, we are just such a hustle culture that it's like you're in, your kids are in all these different sports, and then both parents are working, and then you never get family dinners. And it's like, it's not that it's necessarily bad things, it's just distraction. And so then you feel like you're always reactive instead of being proactive. And I love that a reel that you just put out, and it said, like, isn't it, kind of like what you were saying, isn't it funny that we put so much time and effort into developing our own brand and identity, but we don't put that same effort into our family? And that hit home to me. I was like, that is genius. So can you talk about what your family brand is? I love your family brand. And I loved the story that you told about your son who didn't like sports, because I could relate to this, and I have a question for you after.
Yeah. So our family brand, I think, consists of, like Chris said, it's the culture, like intentionally though deciding what kind of culture do we want in our home. And that's something that's verbalized. And again, like you mentioned, that's a culture of belonging where everyone feels like no matter who they are, like they're part of us, and they belong here. And the other things are, we have, defined family values that we all created together that kind of, show us like who we want to be. For example, one of them is Smiths do hard things. And so it's something that we use every day, this language, to help us become who we want to be. And then we have a vision and like a mission motto. And I think the one you're referring to with our son is, we believe you can be who you want to be. And so our son, he doesn't like group sports.
Team sports.
Yeah. And
Which was a shocker, because Melissa and I love team sports. We both have always played team sports. So
that is so hard, because you want your kids to love what you love.
Totally.
And yes, you see like, oh, this thing has brought me so much joy. Like, if you just liked it, you would love it. I know you would love it, but he just never did. So it was us learning to be like, hey, that's okay. Like, that's more than okay. Like, that's who you are. And we embrace that about you. We love that about you. And
yeah, it's like really trying to live that, like our mission of, we believe you can be who you want to be. Like, there's no pressure to be anything other than you are. And what was cool about that, and Melissa was the one that really fostered this, was she just started paying attention to what he did love, and she just noticed like he is always wrestling with other kids. Like like no matter where we take him, he'll start like he'll stir up a wrestling match, you know. And so
This is when he was probably 5 or 6, like, yeah, starting at that age.
So then she started signing him up for wrestling, which I've never wrestled. I know nothing about wrestling. That led to a fascination with jujitsu. He's now got his yellow belt in jujitsu and has competed in tournaments and done that for a few years. When we lived in Hawaii, he loved surfing because it was him. Like, so he's just drawn to things where he can like, and now I would say he really flourishes in that, and it's totally different. And it's awesome. Like I'm glad he doesn't play team sports. Like I really love that he does jujitsu. I love that he loves to surf. I think it's easy. Like I always joke that it's really easy to love your kids for who they are when they're being who you want them to be.
Right. Exactly.
But the real challenge is like, but can we really love them for who they are when they're not who we want them to be? Like, can we create that kind of culture in our family?
I love that so much. I was dealing with the same thing with my daughter, Olivia, because I was a gymnast, a competitive gymnast all growing up. I did cheer. And I was like, you have the body for it. Like she like when she was younger, she had quads, she had a six pack. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to do so well in gymnastics. And I'm so excited. I put way too much pressure on her. She did it for like 5 years. And one day she's like, I'm over it. Like, I'm sick of this. I want to try something new. I'm like, no, you have to love gymnastics. And she kept telling me, like, I'm not you. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want to do tennis or swim or all these sports I had never done and I didn't know anything about it. And it was hard to let it go, to be like, we've invested all this time and effort, but if it's not what brings you joy, then it's like you have to let go. You have to let them be who they want to be, as hard as that is. But I love that. I feel like kids, tell me if you feel this way, but that they come to you as they are, and you can like, they're like rocks. You can chip away at little edges, but who they are is really who they are. And you have to honor that, because all of my kids are so different.
I totally believe that. And it's kind of like you can either fight this battle or you can just realize, well, I might as well love them for who they are because they're probably going to be who they are anyways.
Exactly.
You know, like, and I think that's the pressure the world puts on us, and not just kids, but as adults. Like, there's a lot of pressure of who you're supposed to be, who you should be, who others expect you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we feel that all the time. And I think that's the power. I want to link it back to the family brand, because look, like, I need our family's values to almost save me from myself, because had we not had that family mission of we believe you can be who you want to be, I wouldn't have handled that as well.
Right.
And it's like you said earlier, like the busyness and like the demands and like the noise and the pressure on families today. It's like I recognized, Bree, that our family values and our family brand was the thing that allowed us to kind of boldly take back our family from the world and be like, okay, we're going to make decisions that are aligned with us, that we want to, not because we're supposed to or that we should. But I think unless you have those kind of guiding values to look at and look at it like a lens to look through, it can be really tricky to know what to say yes to, what to say no to, how to support your children, how to challenge them, how to, so I feel like our family's values and our family brand helps me be a better parent than I would be all the time.
Yes, I love that. And just kind of having that foresight that you have a mission, you have a perspective of what, really your purpose is. I love that so much.
Can I add one thing here?
Please do. Yeah.
And I'm learning, like, as my kids, get older, and hopefully I get more experience as a mother, that I think like one of the great things as parents that we can do is help our kids find out, like, what are your gifts? Like, what are your magic that you bring to the world? Like, what is that? Like, helping them know who they are and loving who they are and believing in who they are. I think that is, as parents, I think that is like one of the most important things that we can foster, getting away from, again, this idea of who they're supposed to be or should be, but like, who are you really?
Yes. Yep. That's so important. So I wanted to ask you, you talk about the type of culture that you're creating in your family. and the differences between high challenge, high support, or low challenge, low support. And this is a question I had. I was curious how you would handle my situation with Olivia, because she will start a sport, but if she feels like she doesn't have friends, she'll want to quit. So I'm like, okay, where do you draw the line where you're like, yeah, you can quit. Like, you're not having fun. I want you to enjoy it. Or no, like, you need to learn how to make friends, because how will you know if you like it if you don't stick it out? So that's where it's like, you still want to, this is the line that you guys talk about as well, is you want to challenge your kids. I was laughing because we actually have the same motto. But we say it with the Coxes, we say hard things are fun. And so, like, I want my kids to be able to do hard things and challenge themselves. But at what point do you say, okay, it's okay to quit, you know?
Yeah, it's really it's really tricky. Like,
Yes.
this idea of, how do we challenge them, because we see who they can become, and we see who they are, and then also how do we support them? And I also think that what I've realized is when you're talking about this idea of creating a culture of challenge and support, where like we're all saying as a family, we're all saying it together, like, look, we're going to challenge each other to be who we are. Like, we're going to challenge each other to be who we can become, and we're going to support each other more than we've ever felt supported. I actually believe that's what every human being wants. Like, I want someone to believe in me enough to challenge me and be committed enough to challenge me. I also want someone who loves me enough to support me. Um, and I also think, Bree, it comes into this like conversation of that challenge and support conversation. Also, to me, like keeping your word and doing what you say you're going to do belongs in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for an example, like with your daughter, it's like, look, there's no pressure on you to play any one particular sport or sign up for any one particular activity. Like, I really want you to do it because it calls to you and because it's what aligns with you, not because you think it's what dad wants you to do or mom wants you to do. So they really feel like they have this space to make the decision, to make the choice, but then say, but I also want us to get into an agreement that if you commit to it, you'll see it through. And it doesn't mean you have to see it through forever. Like, you can
Right.
quit at the end of the season.
Right.
But I'm going to challenge you that if you really want to do it, I'm going to challenge you to stick with it, and I'll support you the entire time you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I want us to get into an agreement. And that's a whole nother conversation. We just released a podcast episode this week, I think, or last week, on creating a culture of agreements in your home instead of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's so powerful because they feel like they have a say.
totally, it was co-created. Like,
Yes.
so, it's like, hey, we had this agreement. You're the one who chose, with our support and our belief, to commit to this sport, knowing that by committing. Now, obviously, if something really gnarly was going on, your daughter was being bullied or there was unsafe, but to me, it's like it's that fine line of, like, I'm really, this is just my personal opinion, I'm really hesitant to let my kids quit things just because it's like, I decided I don't like it, or I decided I'm not having fun, or I decided that
It's boring.
it's
That's what
boring. It's
she'll
like,
say, like, well, it was boring. I'm like, no, I just paid for 3 months. Like, we got to finish the 3 months,
another thing, Bree, that now that you bring that up, I wouldn't have thought to say this. We've created an agreement with our kids that we pay for everything they need and half of what they want. So our kids actually pay for half of their sports, or
That's
half
amazing.
of their gymnastics, or half
How
of
do
their
they
tumbling.
earn the money?
So so that's like a great question. We provide opportunities for them to do extra jobs around the house. Our two oldest boys have a little t-shirt business. Because some parents is like, oh, I love that idea, but then that could also create more work for me as a parent to figure out things for them to do. But I've just seen that, like, our kids they think things through more, even not just a sport they want to sign up for, but they'll really think, do I really want this enough to pay half for it?
Yeah, that's smart.
Anyways, but you bringing that up, though, I think if a child has a little bit of skin in the game, it might change. They might think more about saying yes to it, and they might be a little more committed to the outcome.
Yeah, for sure. I love that idea. So one other thing I want to talk about that I love is being genuine with your children and letting them see the messes and apologizing when you're wrong. So why do you think that that's so important? Can you talk a little to that?
Yeah, I think what we model for our kids is what they'll become. And so I think I've been on this journey this last year, I guess, as we've released the podcast and I've been posting more on social media. Like I think we have this, at least I do. I have this feeling like it all needs to go perfectly, and I have to have everything like execute just right. But I feel like the more I realize, like, no, I'm gonna have mess ups and have like, oh man, I want to do over for that. I think it just sets our kids up to know, like, you don't have to be perfect. Like, that's what life is about. It's about like the journey and trying and never giving up, not quitting. And then as they see like me doing that or Chris and I doing that, I think it just gives them space to feel like they can do it too. They can try, and it's okay if there's a mess up.
Yeah, I love this quote that I don't know who said it, but more is caught than taught.
That's a good one.
So if your kids see you demonstrating it, like Melissa's talking about, and I also remember one time there was this couple that came over with their family, and somehow it came up. The husband asked about our separation, and the wife was like, "Shh, don't say that too loud. Their kids are around." And I was like, "Oh, you can talk about it. Like our kids
Yeah.
totally know we were separated." And they're like, "They do?" And they were kind of like, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to hide anything from our children, like struggles, challenges, like because one of our family values is Smiths can talk about anything without judgment.
Hmm.
Because we want that kind of culture. Like I want my kids at any point in time in their life to be able to come talk to me without judgment. And I think the way you create that is by talking.
Yes, and it's not perfect and nothing's perfect. And then I think they have a realistic expectation for their relationships when they get older too. And they'll know how to deal with with issues that come up or problems that come up. They won't freak out because nothing's perfect. No relationship is perfect. One thing that I really try to do is always apologize to my kids when I mess up. And I noticed they started apologizing to me more. Like at the end of the night when I'd be tucking them in bed, my son would be like, "Hey, mom, I just want to say sorry for yelling. I shouldn't have done that." And I was
Totally.
like, oh, this is so cool. He's modeling what I'm doing. If I never apologized, he would never want to say sorry to me either. So I think you're right, just leading by example. And it's really sweet too. Like, I could lose my cool and yell, and I'll say, like, "I'm so sorry. Will you please forgive me?" And my son, 100 times out of 100, will be like, "Of course. Yeah, it's okay, mom. Like, it's okay. We'll try again tomorrow." Like, he's
I
so
love that.
compassionate and sweet towards me. I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I'm trying so hard. I keep losing my cool." And he's like, "It's okay. It happens to me too." Like, I just like that where you're all in it together.
Yeah. A line that I say probably more than I should is like, I'll just tell my kids sometimes like, "Hey guys, you know how that thing happened earlier and I lost my temper and they're like, yeah, I was like, that's just a dad fail. Like I just failed. I just didn't
Yeah.
get it. I just didn't get it right. Like I
Yeah.
apologize, like there's no excuse for it. There's just like, yeah,
Right.
it
I'm
wasn't,
sorry.
it wasn't good. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then they see you more as human. I really, really like that. So another thing that you guys talk about a lot is creating a safe space in the home for your family. So what are some ways that we can do that?
I think Chris touched on one a second ago. Just allowing our kids to have space to talk and to, when they bring up things. I think it starts early, as early as you can, where something comes up and it's never like, why did, as much as possible, it's never like, why did you do that, or it's like exploring more like where they're at, and just asking questions and understanding them more and better.
Yeah. And one of the things we did to kind of put that into a cadence to build it into the culture is we do this thing called weekly check-ins every Sunday. So every Sunday, Melissa and I go into our bedroom and just one of our kids comes in one at a time. So it's just 2-on-1. and they now fight over who goes first because everyone loves to come in the check-ins. Melissa usually has a little snack in there for them. And we just ask them really two questions. What's important to you this week? And how can we support you? And what's interesting is and then Melissa writes them down on a little whiteboard and it hangs up in our home. And so we're always seeing them. And as important as those questions are, what's most important is it just gets them talking, period.
Yes.
And they know it's a safe space where they can come in and talk to us about anything. And a lot of times they will. Like we'll ask them what's important to you and how can we support you, and we'll get that written down. And then we'll get to like what really is going on, a struggle, a challenge, or like our one of our sons recently is like, hey, I think I like a girl, and came to us and wanted to talk to us about that. Should I tell her that I like her? But I have found that just by being consistent and just talking, like we talk a lot as a family, and we don't just. And sometimes we talk about really serious stuff. Sometimes we talk about funny stuff. But I just we've tried to create this culture of talking, and I've noticed that. I mean, our 13 and 14-year-old boys are like super comfortable talking to us about sex, about pornography, about drugs. They're like, and it kind of surprises some other parents who are around our kids sometimes. But I would way rather have that than my kids don't want to talk to me about anything. So I think it's consistency, but I think your children have to truly believe that they can come say anything to you and that you're going to respond in a loving way and really help them with whatever it is. And if they believe that and you demonstrate it for them and model it enough, they'll start to do it. And like we've had families that have started the weekly check-ins with just based on a recommendation. They're like, man, at first the weekly check-ins were a little bit awkward. Our kids really wouldn't say much. But as they stuck with it 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, their kids started realizing, okay, my mom and dad really are committed to this. I really can count on it. They really do know. They really do want to know what I have to say. And then they would start opening up.
Yeah. And it's laying that foundation for the small stuff. So when the big stuff do come, you have built that relationship, because I guarantee like your child's not going to want to come to you with a pornography problem if you've never talked to them before about anything else,
Totally. We just had a family, actually, one of the coolest stories, Melissa and I still say, like, it's one of the coolest stories of any family that's ever gone through our program. They had a 14-year-old son. They have a 14-year-old son, but when they were going through the family brand program, they were like, man, we are at a loss. Like, our 14-year-old son wants nothing to do with us. He won't talk to us. He never shows affection, and just, we can't get a word out of him. And as they just started demonstrating and as parents and modeling some of the exercises and some of the things that we teach and creating this space, the mom reaches out to us. Well, it was actually a coaching call that we had with her as a follow-up, and she gets really emotional and she's like, you'll never believe it. Like, my 14-year-old's talking to me. He actually came up in the kitchen the other day and gave me this huge hug.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was, and like, we could point to a lot of things, but at the end of the day, they just made him feel safe. Like they gave him a voice and they gave him space, and he felt like he was seen. And now the mom was even joking on a call. She's like, you guys created a monster. I can't get him to stop talking to me now. Like,
that's so cool that you guys are doing something so worthwhile and so rewarding. What a cool job you have. And you created that. That's really amazing. I'm curious. So I saw that you said that there was a study done in 2015, and of the people they surveyed, 49% said their happiest memories were on family vacation. And this hit home for me because when I think of my childhood, my entire childhood is only memories of vacations. Like, for some reason, that's the only thing that really stuck with me, is all the fun vacations we went on. And so my husband and I, our kids are finally to the age where we feel like we can start bringing them. They're not just babies,
Mm-hmm.
And we notice we're trying really hard, but you kind of have to gear yourself up because it's not really a vacation. It's so much work. So do you have any advice for families of young kids and they are trying to create these memories, like maybe to have like more realistic expectations or stick with it? Or do you notice it gets easier the more that you do bring them on vacations?
I think it absolutely does get easier from like a logistical standpoint, meaning we were on a flight recently and I realized we don't have a car seat. We don't have a stroller. Like, this is
We
amazing.
we didn't hold one child in the airport. They all pulled their suitcases. You know, like it was like
Yes,
this
that's a
moment
game
for us.
changer.
Such a game changer. But now, at the time of recording, we just got back from a spring break trip a few weeks ago. And it was so much work, even though they're handling their own stuff. It's different kind of work. So
Yeah.
I guess the advice I would say is like, still do it, even though it's like so much work. I actually asked a question, I think on my stories or something on Instagram about vacations, and I had people. I guess it was a post because people were commenting like their favorite vacations, and it was so like beautiful, really, to read like all these memories that people had, but they were all those simple things like camping. And one woman was like, "I remember the year I went camping and it rained the entire time, and my mom had a newborn." I was like, that sounds like the
Oh
worst
my gosh.
trip ever. But she was like, her like little memory of that was my favorite trip of my life. So I think it's just the consistency, making sure
Mhm.
you're doing the trips, and then knowing like, yes, it's going to be hard work, but like just trying to like roll with what happens, and keep your cool.
Yeah.
And I would say too that the more you travel with your children become better at traveling.
Right.
Like I think we've traveled enough with our kids where they're kind of like, yeah, we know how to travel, and they have this confidence around it and how to navigate,
Uh-huh.
certain things. There's also another study that was done that's similar to this, but it said, what are your favorite memories, just period, from your childhood? And I think it has a lot to do that's relevant to this, which is most adults, most memorable experiences or favorite memories from their childhood are always the simplest.
Yes.
And that was the same thing that we did this with our kids a couple years ago. We asked them their favorite vacation. It was always like, oh, the road trip to grandma's house, when we go camping on Labor Day, it was like,
Mhm.
so I also think you can take some pressure off yourself that they don't have to be this lavish, expensive,
Yeah.
extravagant vacations. Another thing I would say, we come across young couples all the time, in their between 20s and 30s, who they'll say, "Oh yeah, we haven't done a getaway as husband and wife in 5 years, just the two of us. We haven't done a getaway in 8 years. We haven't done a getaway in 3 years." And one of the goals that Melissa and I have now is to do a getaway every quarter. And some people are like, that's impossible. You guys have 5 kids. How do you do that? And it's like, we just make it work. So
Right.
it's so important to us. And they're not all extravagant. Like sometimes it's just for the day. We don't even stay the night.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying you got to do quarterly or any, but one of the things I would say is, yes, travel as a family. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It is worth it. But two, don't forget to travel just as a couple. Like
Yes.
really make getaways a priority,
Yes.
and do it early. Like the earlier you start, it'll be transformative in your marriage.
Yeah, well, two things I was going to say. The Going back to like the simplest vacations they'll remember, we had a 1 bedroom, like beat up, we called it the Little Red House. And it was this little cabin that was like 40 minutes from our house in Eden, Utah. And we would all have to sleep on the floor. There were 6 kids. And we would just go like make scones and play cards and sleep out in our tents on the front lawn. Like it was literally nothing. And that is my favorite childhood memory. And we did nothing. Like we've gone to Europe, we've done all these cool trips, but that is the one that I always remember and look back to. So I definitely second that
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
We
Yeah.
love Eden, by the way.
Oh, you do? It's the best. It's
We've
so
drove through it,
beautiful,
and it was like so dreamy driving through it
right?
in the
I
summer.
know. And the second one was making sure that you take time alone. I think my husband and I probably do too many trips alone. Now we're like, okay, let's include the kids more. I think it's like we love being together. And our friends all say the same thing. They're like, how do you get away? Like, I haven't been on a trip with my husband in 3 years. And I'm like, how do you not? Like, if we didn't, our marriage would definitely not be as strong because I feel like you need that time alone. And it is really hard, definitely, and to find childcare and to do all of that. But whatever's a priority to you, like you'll figure out, right? Like you said, maybe it's just a day away and you don't have to sleep over. So I really love that. And it kind of leads into my second to last question, which is talking about your marriage and when you were separated and what kind of pulled you out of almost really getting a divorce when you had 2 young children.
Yeah, that when people ask me this question, I'm like, okay, how do I make this a very concise
Oh, I'm sure
answer?
yeah.
But I would say the first thing I would offer is that it came to a point where we just decided we are going to stay together. It wasn't an option anymore that we ended our marriage. And so I think that was actually the first thing. It was we had been married for 4 years, but there was still a moment of decision that we had to make. Like, we are going to be married.
Yeah, a buddy of mine has this distinction. There's a difference between decisions and deciding in his mind. So, like in your world, Bree, right around fitness and health, people make the decision all the time. I'm going to get healthy, but they don't decide.
Yes, we're not committed.
Yeah, and so we had made the decision to get married, but in both of our minds, it was like, well, we could always get divorced.
Yes.
But we had this conversation that was like, no, we are deciding. But it
Mhm.
wasn't just we're gonna stay married and be miserable. It was we really decided on 2 things. We are gonna stay married and fight for our family, and we are going to be happy. And as simple as that sounds, that's where it was that commitment is where it started. And then I would say, look, if you're struggling, the thing, and I think we did a podcast episode specifically about this of like what to do when you're struggling, but like it's really useful to have someone in your corner like that's a cheerleader, that's like believing in you and speaking possibility into you. And that, luckily for us, we were so blessed to find this amazing marriage counselor he was that for us. He saw things in us that we couldn't see in ourselves, and he just spoke possibility into us and belief. And because he believed it, we were like, oh, I guess we believe it. Like if you see something, maybe there is something. And then I also say, like, always be careful who you surround yourself with in life. We all know that, but be incredibly careful who you're surrounding yourself with when you're in a struggling relationship. And what I mean by that is you probably, when you're struggling, it's probably a really useful thing to try and get around some couples who aren't struggling, who are willing to speak possibility into you, who are willing to speak life into you. Because I knew when we were struggling, it's almost like I would actively go seek out guys who'd been divorced or guys who were also
Right.
unhappy, and we would commiserate together, and they would basically tell me like, oh yeah, just leave her, you'll be happier, get divorced. And
Mhm.
I started believing that,
Right. Because you want validation for what you're feeling.
totally. You want validation for what you're feeling, and oftentimes you want validation for the lies you're telling yourself, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know, that I know that sounds really simple, but really, like, surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you, and then get around couples who inspire you.
And I have one
Oh,
more
yes.
thing to add. I think it was huge for us too, is we each decided, like, we each took ownership of the relationship. And like, it was so easy for one or the other of us to fall into this like victim in it all. And then, but we both had to work on ourselves and realize we're not going to change the other person. So anything that's going to change is going to be like us working on ourselves and becoming better individuals. And as we became stronger, individuals ourselves, like that collectively had our marriage become better as well.
Yes. And I feel like it's really inspiring to watch because if you look at your Instagram, which is our family brand, if you look at it, it looks like you guys have a perfect family. And so it is inspiring to see like, oh, it hasn't always been perfect and they worked on it and it got better and look at where they are now. And so I think it's so cool that you are so open about that part of your life and that you're willing to help other people and show what the possibility is. Because if someone is struggling right now, they can look at your family and see the possibility. So I just think there's so much strength and vulnerability, and what you do is really, really cool. And I'm so grateful for all of your advice and how you help people. And if you could leave us with one piece of advice for our family brand or anything we talked about, what would it be?
I'll go first and then I'll let Chris go. I would just echo maybe our family motto that you can be who you want to be. You might see where you're at now and know like maybe you want to be something different or do something different, like, but maybe don't feel like you can. I just think there's so much power in knowing that you can be who you want to be, create the type of family that you want to have and the type of person you want to become, that it's all possible.
Yeah, I love that, Melissa. And I guess I would add that I would never underestimate the contribution that you make to the world as a strong family. And not even, I don't mean perfect, but even a family that's just trying. Like I really believe the key to strengthening the world and saving the world, if you will, is through strong families. Like your commitment to try as a family strengthens your neighborhood, it strengthens your community, it strengthens your city, it strengthens your state, it strengthens a country. Like, and so I would just say, like, we believe as a family, like, you deserve to win. Like, we want to see families win, and we want to see families feel like they're winning, and you deserve that.
I love that. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I want everyone to be able to listen to your podcast and find your program. So can you let everybody know where to find you?
Yeah, you can find us at familybrand.com. And then our podcast, you can search on any platform. It's called Family Brand.
Awesome. Oh, shoot. I said our family brand, but it's just Family Brand, right?
So our Instagram, you were correct. Okay. Our Instagram handle is Our Family Brand.
Okay. That's what I thought. I'm like, wait.
Because Family Brand wasn't available, but I'm like, no one has it. I'm like, why can't I have this?
Something in the universe doesn't want us to have family brands. We have Our Family Brand for Instagram.
Okay. And Our Family Brand for Instagram. And then your website is?
Just familybrand.com. Yep.
Familybrand.com. Okay. And your podcast is Family Brand.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to link all of those in the show notes for anyone that wants to find you and do your program. And I'm just so grateful for all the wisdom that you've shared with us today. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having us. It was fun.
Thanks, Bree.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. If you liked the content and want to hear more, remember to hit that subscribe button and write a review. As a small business owner, I appreciate it more than you know. If you are looking for a program to help with self-confidence, to lose weight, get in shape, and work on your mental, physical, and emotional health, check out my training programs on www.bodybybree.com. My team and I help to hold you accountable through the Body by Bree app, where you log in to see all your workouts, custom meal plan made specifically for you and your needs, and communication through the messenger. You are never alone when you're on the Body by Bree training program. Click the link in the show notes to get more information on how to transform your life from the inside out.